My God, she just shattered his knee joint with her bare hands. The entire VA hospital hallway fell silent. 3 armed men writhed on the tiled floor, while Elena Brooks stood steady, her breathing calm, her eyes unblinking. Those around her thought she must be panicking. But one veteran stepped back, his gaze suddenly locking on her back. There, blurred against her skin, was a tattoo. A string of coordinates. He knew too well the place where his comrades had fallen. A nurse with a tattoo of the SEAL unit's secret coordinates? Who was she, really? The storage room door shut behind Marcus with a dry, final click. The fluorescent light above Nurse Brooks flickered as if refusing to fully illuminate. In the cold, damp air smelling of old paper files, silence stretched taut like a wire. Marcus, the young soldier, his arm still wrapped in stitches, pulled a weathered map from his pocket. He didn't look at her right away, only laid the map on the metal table, his trembling finger pointing to a faint mark in the desert scarred by bullets. "Here," he whispered, his voice scraped raw from his throat. "This coordinate, it's where my father disappeared. Iron Shield, 2012. Brooks gave no reply. She only closed her eyes. Behind her eyelids, shards of memory collided like broken glass. Desert wind lashing skin raw. Gunfire echoing. A UH-60 Black Hawk burning on the dunes. She saw again bloodied hands gripping her tight, the commander's breath ragged in mud and gunpowder smoke. His last words whispered into her ear. "If I fall, let it live on your spine." In that moment, Brooks understood why Marcus looked at her with such eyes. He knew nothing. Not about Iron Shield, not about the code inked into her back with the kind of dye used for military maps. A coordinate that didn't exist on any official paper, only in the memories of those who survived. The cold ink on her skin seemed to burn alive. The line of that tattoo, a single mark running straight from her nape down to her 4th vertebra, was not just a trace of a mission, but a living will, a fragment of the past buried in classified files and silence. She stepped forward slowly, standing beside Marcus. In the dim light, their shadows stretched across the map. Her hand gently rested on the mark he had pointed out. "Are you certain? About this point?" Her voice barely escaped a sound. Marcus nodded. "He once sent back a coded radio message. I decoded it and it matches the tattoo on your back. I don't know why." She turned her face away, steadying her breath so it wouldn't break. Some wounds don't bleed, yet they seep each time the wind shifts. Brooks had buried that memory long enough to believe no one remembered Iron Shield, but the truth was, there was always someone still searching for the way back. Not for the mission, but for a father. She knew then, that message was never meant for her. It was meant for the commander's son. And maybe now, the time had come to open that code. And before we continue with the rest of the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit like on this video. Oh, and leave a comment below to tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to know. There are wounds that never bleed, yet they carve scars so deep they etch beneath the skin like the number 29040, once carved with a dagger during a sandstorm on the outskirts of Kabul, when the entire unit believed they wouldn't live through the night. And on that unnervingly quiet night at the small medical station of Fort Benning, that number returned. Marcus had stayed behind after his shift. The operating room lights dimmed, leaving only the beam of his tablet's flashlight, its screen, showing a string of redacted data, classified files, erased code names, but the KIA section remained. Killed in action. The names of every man from SEAL Team Bravo Echo marked dead on the very same day. A helicopter accident, the official report claimed. But the satellite images Marcus had found in the declassified military network told a different story. Scorch marks stretched by a rotor blade, shattered wing fragments scattered far, revealing a crash site nearly 7 miles from the coordinates in the report, and worse drag marks leading away from the wreckage. Marcus couldn't sleep. He quietly opened Nurse Brooks's locker and slipped in a folded note. The handwriting was still the same neat slant he used for patient reports, but this time it carried the whisper of instinct. They said all were dead, but I know you carry what remains of that unit. No name, no signature. He left it there like a question that demanded no answer. The next morning, Brooks arrived a few minutes late. No one noticed anything unusual, except for her footsteps, slower, but resolute, as if something had been decided after a sleepless night. Her eyes remained calm, though her eyelids were swollen, betraying tears wiped hastily in the car mirror. She found the note right after her first shift of the day. No one knew, but she stood motionless in the supply room until nearly noon. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the surge of memory, the roar of rotors, comrades screaming, and the final promise she made to the youngest soldier, Thomas: "If you don't make it, I'll carry your number forward." Brooks tore the note into strips, folding them small. But before she finished, a tear struck the corner of the paper, spreading into a faint stain. Inside her locker, hidden behind gauze boxes and sterile syringes, lay a small wooden case. She hadn't opened it in years. Inside was a dog tag, no name, no rank, only the number, 29040. The ID of Thomas Riley, the youngest of the team, the one who gave his life so she could survive. She lifted the tag. The light caught its engraved edge, sparking like a tiny ember of memory rekindled. Brooks slipped the tag into her inner pocket, saying nothing. But from that moment she knew. The secret had begun to leak. And if Marcus truly meant to pursue this, he would not stop at a single note. Because only someone who had seen 29040 or worn it on their chest could understand the pain behind it. Was Marcus really just a curious resident doctor? Or was there something deeper driving him toward the buried memory? And if Brooks chose to open Pandora's box of the past, what would rise again from the ashes? The first gunshot tore through the ordinary hum of the day like a jagged rip in fabric. A small tray of medicine crashed onto the white tile floor, capsules scattering and rolling toward the ER doors. On the security monitor, 3 guards dropped almost simultaneously, clean, precise, without hesitation, as if the intruder had rehearsed it all their life. Brooks was stacking blister packs in the pharmacy storage room. She looked up at the short, clipped tone of the intercom, a code reserved for emergencies that had nothing to do with patients. There was no time to change clothes, no evacuation order. She stripped off her gloves and unlocked the steel cabinet beside her, the one hiding an old charcoal gray shirt and a black steel folding knife without a serial number. Down the west corridor, 3 intruders moved in veteran uniforms, but their bodies betrayed them. Not the weary shuffle of soldiers long returned, but the clipped, hunting stride, eyes sweeping targets, weapons ready. They weren't here for medicine. They were here for something or someone. Brooks stepped out of the storage room, silent as a shadow. No alarms, no screams. When the first man turned and spotted her, it was already too late. A swift pivot, a precise strike, his knee shattered. His weapon spun up into the air, caught mid-flight, instantly turned back toward the second man. He raised his hand but never pulled the trigger. A sharp blow to the throat sent him down, unconscious but alive. The last intruder stumbled back, fear in his eyes. He tried to run, but Brooks was already there, cutting through the hall like a desert wind at night. A spinning kick to the ribs slammed him onto a pile of stretchers, motionless. The entire fight lasted less than 12 seconds. No one saw it but her and the hospital's outdated cameras. The rapid response team's boots thundered from the far end of the hall. Brooks didn't wait. She turned away, tugging down the zipper of her white blouse. The pale corridor light traced the muscles of her back and the tattoo that stretched from nape to waist, sharp, coded numbers. Indecipherable to most, but to anyone who had served in the teams, unmistakable. Ghost 12. A name that did not exist in military records. A unit erased after a black mission in Djibouti presumed lost, every man written off as dead. No one knew that one survived. And at this exact moment, under the dim light of a VA hospital, that survivor stood over 3 unconscious intruders, like a ghost, shaking the dust of battlefields back into the present. A young doctor rushed in, breathless, eyes wide. "My God, what did you just do?" Brooks only looked at him, calmly pulling her blouse closed, bending to pick up the spilled blister pack. Her voice was low, steady. Just what needed to be done. But was this really a random break-in, or had old enemies finally caught the scent of Ghost 12 after all these silent years? The basement door closed behind her, the sound echoing like a knock against a coffin lid. Elena Brooks stood motionless in the dark, where the only light leaked through a narrow vent near the ceiling. No patience. No more reports. No white coat left to hide the tattoo at her nape, the ink faded but still burning like a ghostly ember. On the computer screen still open, Marcus had left a file with a simple title, PD-07, a code, a signal, an accusation. In her mind, the gunfire of that year thundered again. The voices calling from the abandoned base, the faces of comrades dusted in red, and over the radio, the order denying reinforcements. All of it led back to Phoenix Dawn. That afternoon, the treatment ward was unusually empty. Brooks never returned after her lecture. Doctors asked around, nurses whispered, but only one person knew for sure. She was gone. Marcus stood in the hallway, clutching a printed diagram of equipment seized during the break-in. In the list, amid meaningless symbols, one line burned clear. PD-07, a jamming device banned after Operation Iron Shield. It couldn't be coincidence. He left the hospital and went straight to the small apartment where Brooks lived. The door was ajar, the room stripped bare, nothing left but a patient's bracelet she had once kept as a keepsake. On the table sat a small box inside, a phone with the battery removed, and an old photograph. Marcus recognized the face of the soldier in sunglasses, his father, and standing beside him, Brooks in SEAL fatigues, 10 years younger, wearing the faintest ghost of a smile. Across the federal network, the FBI issued an internal alert suspecting links to the traitorous group Phoenix Dawn, but all they had was a name, Elena Brooks, no address, no mission file, no recent image. She had wiped every trace, as if rehearsed for years, and maybe she truly had. At a truck stop near the border, a short-haired woman sipped hot coffee, her eyes meeting no one. Her left hand pulled up the collar of her jacket, hiding part of her neck. There, a tattoo of 3 phoenix wings in a circle, faded but never gone. A driver asked to borrow a lighter. She handed him a silver Zippo, engraved with the number 1149. He didn't know its meaning. But if Marcus had been there, he would have recognized it instantly, the last unit designation of his father. Brooks boarded a westbound bus. She knew the FBI was searching. She knew Marcus wouldn't stop. But she knew one thing even more clearly. Phoenix Dawn had returned, and this time their target wasn't overseas operations. It was inside the homeland. And she was one of the few left alive who could still trace their path from Iron Shield to the VA hospital, from war zones to memories buried in blood and fire. Night fell over the desert. The small bus drove into the darkness, each streetlight flashing like the heartbeat of an untold memory. Brooks closed her eyes. In her palm, she gripped a torn scrap of map marked with a facility once sealed by the CIA in Nevada, codename Cradle Echo. She knew she would never return to medicine, never step onto the lectern again, and maybe never return at all. But if Phoenix Dawn truly rose again, then the one who once bore the SEAL insignia, who had survived the hell of Iron Shield, would be the first to walk into the fire. And this time she would not wait for orders. All right, my dear audience, if you're still watching and find this story gripping, drop a comment with the number 1 or simply write, "I'm still here" to keep listening. She stepped out of the taxi just as dawn broke. The blare of horns on South Washington's First Avenue was drowned out by the pounding of her own footsteps. Standing before the Pentagon, its vast geometry rising like a fortress in the Capitol's heart, Brooks held her breath. Not from awe at its architecture, but from memories buried deep beneath its stone, memories rushing back as if the very walls still carried the smoke and ash of that year. Her hand touched the cold wall. Her fingers brushed the spot where once hung the Ghost 12 team photo. 12 people, 12 faint smiles in the Middle Eastern sun. Now only she remained. That photo had been quietly removed after the Somalia withdrawal of the 7th of September 2012 was stamped tactical failure. But Brooks hadn't forgotten, and she believed someone here hadn't either. In the main lobby, she left a handwritten note, unsigned, bearing only 4 lines. I want to meet the man who signed the withdrawal order on the 7th of September, 2012. I am Ghost 12. I survived. And I have questions. The receptionist glanced at the words. No nod, no word, only a strange stillness, as if trained to recognize when an old ghost had returned. That afternoon, Brooks was summoned to the 6th floor, walking down a carpeted gray corridor where each stone seemed to echo decisions signed in ink and blood. She waited outside the senior advisor's office. Beyond the thick door, General Palmer was in session. His name tightened her chest, the man who had ordered the withdrawal while her team still burned in the fire. More than 10 years, and he was still here, still part of the machine's core. A door opened. He'll see you in 5 minutes, an aide said. Brooks rose. In the glass beside the elevator, she caught her reflection, hair tied back, hands clutching a worn file, eyes no longer of a soldier but of a seeker of truth. Her memory flared the last transmission from Reyes, Ghost 12's commander, sent on an emergency channel before contact was cut. If anyone survives, find Palmer. He knows the reason. Don't let Phoenix Dawn escape. She tightened her grip on the file inside. Coded coordinates, censored satellite images, and a strange emblem. The mark of Phoenix Dawn. Erased from Pentagon files, but never erased from the minds of those who lived. The office door opened. A deep voice called, without looking up. Come in. Brooks crossed the threshold, carrying with her every ghost of the past. But what she didn't know was, Palmer wasn't alone in that room. A name from the old inferno was waiting, and he already knew she would come. Are you still here, my dear audience? Take a pause, sip some water, and stay with me for what comes next. If you're finding this story gripping, drop a 1-inch the comments. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. The conference room door closed behind Brooks with a heavy sound, like the strike of a verdict. 4 steel-lined walls absorbed every echo, allowing nothing to escape, as if the room itself knew that what was about to happen did not belong to the outside world. Lieutenant General Palmer stood there, a dark screen behind him, one hand resting lightly on a thick dossier. He did not greet her, did not gesture. He only looked at the woman entering like a ghost from the past, a shadow he once believed had vanished with the explosion in Kandahar. Brooks said nothing, no defiant look, no words of accusation. She simply stepped forward, calm as someone laying flowers on a grave. From her coat pocket, she pulled out an old metal tag, the back engraved with the number 29040. Palmer froze. His face, hardened by war and politics, suddenly went pale, as if he were staring at the ghost of his own conscience. That is... His throat tightened, the words breaking apart like shattered glass. That is the final code Ghost Team sent back. Who allowed you to keep this? Brooks did not reply. Instead, she turned, lifting her shirt slightly. Cold light spilled across her back, revealing faded lines of ink. Not artwork, but coordinates. A string of longitude and latitude trembling faintly with her breath, etched into her skin like the last survival marker of a unit buried alive. Beneath the coordinates was a smaller line of text, faded with the years. When the truth is buried, return here. A silence dropped over the room. Not the trained stillness of the military, but the silence of secrets being torn open. Palmer no longer stood steady on his political footing. His hand slipped from the dossier. At that moment, the security door swung open behind him. Footsteps struck sharp, metallic, undeniable. Nicole Hayes appeared. Her uniform was immaculate, investigator's badge gleaming on her chest, eyes fixed unflinchingly on Palmer. "I am Nicole Hayes, Special Military Investigator," she said, her voice firm, not loud but clear as a summons. "And the Phoenix Dawn file has been reopened. Brooks is the final piece we needed." Palmer flinched, as though hearing an indictment read aloud. But Hayes did not stop. "She is not alone. Everything that was buried, all of it is coming back. Not for revenge, but to be remembered the right way." Brooks remained silent. But in her eyes now there was no longer a ghost. There was a witness. The tolling bell for the forgotten souls. Who else on the High Council was still hiding the truth? And how many more layers of hell would this investigation unearth? The elevator chimed softly into the midnight hush. The doors slid open, and Elena Brooks stepped out, her soft-soled shoes making no sound against the cold marble floor. The top floor of the building had long since gone dark, but she needed no light. Her steps glided down the corridor as if she were walking through a memory etched into her very body. No one stopped her. No one dared anymore. The metal tag hanging around her neck, the Ghost Mission insignia, caught the glow from a billboard outside the glass wall. No longer faded, no longer fractured like before. Marcus had restored it. And now it lay against her skin like a new vow. Quiet, unadorned, but irrevocable. By the time she stepped outside headquarters, the rain had begun. New York rain at night always carried a sound half cleansing, half threatening. Elena carried no umbrella. The drops ran through her short brown hair, down the collar of her shirt. But she felt no chill, only life. For the first time in years, her skin truly felt the wind. A message arrived just as she turned into the narrow alley beside the train station. "I'll keep going if you'll train me the way you once did, Marcus." She stopped. The phone screen lit her tired but unyielding eyes. No emojis, no flattery, only trust. And in this world, sometimes that was worth more than a life. The small apartment she was staying in was as quiet as always. But the mirror was not. In it, she no longer saw Elena Brooks, the hunted VA nurse, the fugitive. She saw the woman who had endured it all. The blood spilled in the ward. Betrayal from command. The deaths of comrades and who still stood here. She slipped off her shirt, baring her back. There it was, the ghost tattoo untouched, as if time itself could not erode it. A black circle, coordinates, and the fateful number, 02940. Each line of ink a blood oath, a summons from the dark she had once tried to forget. But she no longer turned away. She faced it now as a part of her body she could never cut free. Moments later, she entered the old training room. Dust coated the mats. The fluorescent lights flickered like fading memories. Yet under her feet, it lived again. Elena stood before the mirror, raising her hands as in the old days. Defensive stance, then attack. Movements fluid, flawless. Her body had never forgotten. Only her heart had refused to obey. With a final spin, she exhaled. A long, steady breath. That night, she sent a message back to Marcus. Only one word. Tomorrow. No explanation, no plan needed. But anyone who had ever borne the ghost insignia understood. Tomorrow was never just another day. It was the beginning of the next battle. She stepped out onto the balcony, looking down at the streams of car lights below, pulsing like veins of a living body. The city never slept, and neither did the monsters in its shadows. Elena smiled faintly. The fight wasn't over. But this time she wasn't fighting for the past. She was fighting for the ones still left behind. Some wars never end with the sound of gunfire. They end with a look in the mirror. Elena Brooks stood there, cold fluorescent light spilling over the sealed tattoo on her back, a mark that could never be erased. It wasn't just the insignia of a unit, but a living scar of all she had lost: her teammates, her honor, and a part of her soul left behind in the desert sands. And yet, that very tattoo had become the reason she would never bow her head again. Elena was no longer Ghost 12, living only in the shadows. She was a survivor. The last witness to a truth someone had tried to bury. In the hospital room, still heavy with the scent of antiseptic, Marcus lay there, his hand gripping the dog tag she had left behind. A young soldier who seemed lost, but perhaps he would be the one to rekindle something Elena had long since dropped: faith. Because maybe we don't get to choose how we survive, but we can choose why we keep living. A quiet message was sent out into the night, not an apology, but a beginning. "I'm ready to learn." Elena had not replied, but she had opened an old drawer, pulling out a map and a worn slip of paper with 2 words: Phoenix Dawn. The ink was blurred at the edges, but the question remained sharp. Had they truly disappeared? If something in this story made your heart pause, leave a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from and at what time. Share this video with a loved one, a soldier, or someone who has kept silent through their pain, because maybe they need to hear this. And if you want to know what happens next, if you believe Elena's mission isn't over, leave us a message. Part 2 is being written not just on a keyboard, but in the faith of people like you. Because souls never vanish, as long as there is someone left to tell their story.